everybody. Welcome to Parenting a Child with ADHD. My name is Angel. I use they, them pronouns. I am the coach at ND Empower. Huge shout out to Dina, because without Dina, this group would never have happened. Because I also have ADHD, and so I needed that support of someone else. This power presentation that we're going through is, I will admit, it's some hard truths, and it's pretty blunt. So, what I would like to disclose to you before we dive in there is that I'm also neurodivergent. I'm a parent with several kids on different parts of the neurodivergent spectrum. And anything I'm sharing today is because I know that you want what's best for your child, and that not everything I say is going to land great, I guess. And I just want you to take the information you can use and maybe come back and revisit the information another time. So if you can just try to remember that this is my intentions here today are to actually support you. And so, let's start with the parenting experience for having somebody who is on that ADHD spectrum, because we worry. I don't know what your worry is like, but I know mine was pretty astronomical. My child presented with really high needs when it came to ADHD, and I wasn't aware of the dramatic impacts that can happen on that spectrum until that time as parent. And I could see that it was a lot more than not just paying attention, right? I've struggled with hyperactivity and not paying attention, but watching the way that it impacted my child made a lot more things in my own life make sense. My struggle with school, the challenges I have driving, managing money, running a household, getting tasks done, the need to have 100 million projects up in the air and nothing is getting done. Like, all of these things started to really make sense to me as I started to learn more about my child and his brain and how things worked there. And so as parents, we see that, right? We see the impact for our child. We see that it's a lot more than just they can't do their homework, um, or sit still in class, that they can't plan. They also don't seem to have hindsight. They're not pulling up memories of the other times they've been in those situations to moderate their own behavior. They don't have the same inhibitions that we want them to be able to see. They don't have that foresight that we want them to have so that they can succeed. So, as parents, when we're dealing with ADHD, we worry, and that worry um, can really impact how we move forward as we support. So, it's really important that we remember that our job as a parent isn't to fix the unfixable. If you have a child with ADHD, they have ADHD. And they might outgrow some of the symptoms, although research is showing that it's not so much that they outgrow it, they learn to mask it, they learn to cover it up. But their executive functioning is always going to be impacted. And executive functioning, if you're not familiar with it, reach out later. I will send you a slide that goes through the 7 major areas that executive functioning impacts, and it's a lot more than I can't pay attention during a boring lecture. And check out Dr. Berkeley's videos. He talks a lot about the comorbidity of ADHD, autism, oppositional defiant disorder, and you can check out also research on pervasive pathological demand avoidance as well, and interoception and stuff like that, and all those overlaps. And you can see that historically and contemporarily, research shows that ADHD is a lot more than not being able to pay attention. It's always going to impact their executive functioning. There is no magic skill we're going to give them, no magic social skills lessons, no magic pill even that is going to erase the fact that they are ADHD. So our job's not to engineer their brain. Our job is to provide that thing that no one else can provide, the care. So it's our job to make sure that we're protecting our child, which I'm sure you've already had run-ins with. IEP, am I right? Worst thing ever, and yet so desperately needed. But it's our job to be the person who's standing there between our child and the world in order to provide them the best environment we can. And that means protecting them from discrimination at school, advocating for them to have accommodations, creating a space where they are safe to be the person that they are, and ensuring good nourishment. Like I'm going to hammer on this quite a bit. As a fat ADHD person, I can tell you that that sugar craving is very real, and it's scientifically been demonstrably linked to the lack of norepinephrine, or however you say that, that is the building block for dopa and dopamine. And so recognizing that there is a drive to have those high carb, high sugar foods, and that we need to provide as much nutritional support as we can, and other ways also of boosting dopamine. And we want to find environments that our child can thrive in. And that is easier said than done. The things we're looking for are high quality, supportive, stimulating. And if you look into the how to increase executive functioning, martial arts, improv, acting, role playing, these things all build executive functioning. And so a good D&D group, or um, uh, even a what looks like a parallel play group, like a Minecraft group where they have to work together and like come up with systems and build towns, that helps build and strengthen the capacity for executive functioning. And so we can do those things. We can find those environments that, by the way, also support them socially, just by focusing on being a caretaker instead of focusing on trying to fix them. And because they're fine the way they are if society was different, right? And so nothing we do is going to change the neurology of what's happening inside their brain. Um, we have to stop just focusing on our child to address concerns and look outside of the home. So we need to reach out to teachers, community resources, adults in the neighborhood, grown-ups who've successfully navigated neurodivergence, and find those pro-social environments. And at home, what we need to do is just focus on carrying the support, the good nutrition, and bear with me here, it is hereditary. So we also need to be making sure that we're addressing our own needs, so that we can model strategies. If your young adult or child has ADHD, chances are so do siblings, and chances are so do other people in your family, including you. And the needs may be different, maybe in a different spot on that spectrum, and that's okay. It is a spectrum. But if we aren't modeling, for example, person first language, they're not going to use person first language. If we're not able to execute time management in a way that supports our world, they're not going to be able to. If we're not able to advocate to our partners, our friends, our family, our bosses, what we need to be able to function appropriately, they're not going to learn those things. And so we need to just love ourselves, love them, set the routines up, be predictable, make sure we're looking after our own crap. And again, let's talk about that sugar addiction, right? And making sure that we're looking after our own nutrition and modeling what we want them to do. So I have some QR codes. I'll leave this slide up for a little bit. A lot of the resources, I try to provide you with at least one video in each of the resources, because some of us learn better that way. And also as many research papers as I can find that are free. And a hint, if you come across research papers behind paywalls, find the author on LinkedIn or on their university website and just email them directly. Most authors will share with you their research papers. They don't actually get paid for those papers being in the journal. And in fact, some of them spend a lot of money trying to get into the journals. But that research, they do that to build understanding, to build capacity in communities. Like they're doing that research because they're passionate about it. So I've found the majority of researchers will just give you their research. Like they're totally happy to share their papers. And some of the bigger names in ADHD in particular, there's a lot of videos and shorter bits of information out there that's designed for us parents and caregivers. And so make sure that you check those out. Okay, and these slides will be available after if you didn't manage to QR code them now. Okay, predictability is a big part of sorry, the picture distracted me because it's moving. Predictability is a big part of supporting youth who are neurodivergent, whether that's ADHD, anxiety, personality disorders, which I always wonder if that's actually ADHD because emotional regulation is a huge part of ADHD, that sort of thing. So we want to set an actual homework time, right? So every day there needs to be a set time for homework. And we need to make sure that those visual supports are there. So telling our kid to do homework isn't going to be enough, right? Every day, what assignments did you get? Let's enter them into the calendar, show them how to break the assignment down into small parts, use colored sticky notes. I like red, yellow, green because they're like stoplights, right? Where I can be like, stop. Did you gather your information? Do you have to go and look stuff up? How much time should that take? Also have predictable rules with clear consequences, and the consequences need to be more immediate. So the ADHD, because we don't have the same neurology going on, we can't wait for consequences. And in this case, consequences can be positive or negative, right? Like in that, happy or not so happy. So if they're supposed to be doing homework between 5 and 6, and they were playing, you come in there on their computer, you've lost computing privileges. Right? So now you can only use like immediately, you've now lost computing privileges, right? You cannot use your computer for the next week until you've shown me you can respect homework time. And if that's a problem, for them to respect homework time, bring homework time into the family room instead of in private, so that you are there to support them and be prepared to support them. Having those clear consequences, and same with while they're doing their homework, right? Can you solve this math problem? Good job, right? I'm impressed, right? How about this one? Are you able to do this one? Can you find the mistake on this one? Because it's a mistake I would have made too. You know what I mean? And giving that constant feedback, which means you have to be present during the homework. Because when you do homework, when you're doing assignments, that gratification is later when you get the marks. And that can be really hard with ADHD. Like we need gratification now. We need our parades now, right? And so remembering that, and it's the same with consequences, right? When you find out your youth or young adult has done something that is against whatever rules you have in your family, but it was done like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, use that as a learning opportunity instead of setting a consequence, because it's too late, right? They've already done it. So go, like, what things happened that you wish hadn't happened because of that choice, right? Like let's really look at the impact of that choice. Whose feelings were hurt? What damage was done? Right? Even damage between us, because now when next time we go to assume that you're not doing this thing, what thoughts am I going to have? Right? So being able to do that. And then also focusing on their amazingness, not their weaknesses or barriers. So we want our youth to be aware that there are challenges they're going to have, right? Working memory is a really big problem. Being able to access all the things that we need in order to get the things done, getting started, being motivated, emotional regulation. They need to know when these things come up that that is part of their biology, not their fault. You're not a bad kid, right? Your brain really struggles with this. So let's see how we can fix that. That's how we want to deal with that, right? So instead of expecting your child to always turn off the light, put a visual right at eye level at the door that says, click the switch, right? Or whatever. Set up smart lights so that an alarm goes off if they leave at 8:15, an alarm goes off at 8:17 that says, don't forget to turn off the lights, and they can click the button, right? That sort of thing. ways to accommodate the challenges, but focus on their amazingness, right? What kind of things does your child have an interest in? What do they do? What fascinating bits about them? And we want to focus on that. We want to remind them that they have beautiful things about them, because they're going to constantly be bombarded with the scolding from society for just being who they are, for things that are outside of their control. Because ADHD is not something that you can strong arm yourself out of. It just isn't. We can mask it, we can hide it, but it's just going to create bigger problems in the long term. So there are 4 keys to being able to support a youth with ADHD. Um, we know that support of loved ones is the number one factor for success as an adult. It's just the support of your family. That's huge. We need to accept that it is a neurogenetic disorder that, yes, has environmental factors, but isn't something that we can do something to change. It is a fact. When somebody has ADHD, that's how their brain works. Um, so we want to focus on compensating for deficits and therefore reducing the impairments. That's all those accommodations, having the visuals, using technology, right? Breaking things down into steps, those kinds of things, and take advantage of the help that's out there. And honestly, you need to use meds when necessary and sustain their use through adolescence. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go through. So, first, acceptance, right? Um, Part of accepting is looking at what is unique about our child. And those are things that we tend to assign good and bad values to, where they're actually morally neutral. They're just facts, right? So, for example, my oldest child, who is definitely on the more hyperactive part of the spectrum, um, he can get injured sleeping. Don't even ask, right? It's very unique about him. He's constantly getting hurt, thankfully, not too bad. He's got the most incredible sense of humor that I've ever come across, a very deep, um, sneaky sense of humor. He's very good at helping people think things through with the use of humor. So he's able to challenge someone to grow through the use of humor. He's also very keen on thinking for himself. And this is an amazingly unique thing that I struggle to describe. So even though he's surrounded in his workplace by people who think a certain mindset, he's always looking for opportunities to expand his own mindset and actively participates in that growth process and always has. He's uninhibited, absolutely, but he's completely okay with accepting himself, even when it's something he's done that might someone else might feel is embarrassing or whatever. He's very is really good at humility, right? These are amazing things about this individual. And then part of acceptance is, what old expectations am I holding on to? And I struggle with this one because my oldest is very intelligent. I thought for sure he was going to have some sort of a professional job. And I really see him as wasted in the position that he's in. And that is something I have to cope with. I have to deal with that. I have to start letting go of those expectations in order to really be the support that he needs me to be, because he prefers the career that he's in. He prefers the half laboring, equipment running jobs. That's what works for him. It works for his schedule, it works for his budget. He has no interest in going back to school. I need to let that go. I mean, he's already got 3 children, and I need to let that go. That's an expectation of mine that I have no business putting on him. And then, am I a safe person for my child? Right? When they come to me with their problems, do I give them shit? because they've done things because of their ADHD that have impacted them in a negative way at work, at school, and their relationships? Or do I give them a safe space to talk about those things without judgment? Am I able to help them find supports and solutions and ways to accommodate their own brain? Um, and do I give them unconditional positive regard? Right? Those are the key parts of acceptance. And we can do that very easily just by remembering that we love our child and being willing to look at our own behavior and see all the ways in which we're clinging to some things that don't allow us to accept our child the way they are. Now, remember I talked about how much family support matters? Because acceptance is a big part of being a family support. We are in this incredible spot in their lives where all we have to do is be a support. And that is the number one resilience factor for kids on the spectrum. Um, just by loving them and focusing on their strengths and promoting their, wow, that's a terribly spelled word, competence. All of them are spelled wrong. And finding resources to support them and being safe for them, like that whole concept of being a support is linked in research to success. And as a note, tough love does not work, and that includes for youth that have oppositional defiant disorder or pathological demand avoidance. We need to recognize that that tough love doesn't matter. If somebody would email me and remind me that my Family Matters slide is like in desperate need of spell check, that would be cool. That's a way you could support me because I can't spell. And so we need to recognize that in that capacity building, right? That time escapes people with ADHD. It totally escapes them. So we can support that by making time more tangible. We make sure there's clocks in every room. We can make sure that we set time limits for tasks. Like, this is how long this should take. We can verbalize our own planning for time. We can use giant stopwatches. We can use our smartphones, right? Like, get that technology, the iPods and the whatever with all these scheduling things so that everything is associated to time, right? If we're going to have a fast dinner, it's going to take me half an hour to prepare. If I'm going to make a proper dinner, I need to set aside at least an hour, probably an hour and a half, because there's going to be something I've got to go to the store for, right? That kind of thing. If I'm going to throw laundry on, it only takes me 5 minutes to throw it on, but it's going to take me 2.5 hours to start from the beginning and have those clothes come out dried and ready to wear, unless you have a way better dryer than me. And like, so being able to verbalize, like, if I actually want to wear those clothes, I'm going to need at least, this amount of time to make sure that they're ready. And like, everything we do in life is associated to a time factor. So we need to make that real for our youth to help them with the concept of time and planning. And you might find it helps you too. So with kids on the spectrum of ADHD, they are in the now. That means they're not getting that video replay of um, what happened before and the consequences of that, what worked and what didn't work. They're not thinking about what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. It's all about the now, and nothing shows us more than the homework problem. Um, Folks with ADHD tend to need that pressure of, oh no, this is due. I probably don't have enough time to even get started, because it doesn't exist for them until that pressure builds up. And so we need to accomplish strategies using technology and reminders to break tasks down into steps that are done over a longer period of time in order to address this, and to also verbalize the, like, in the moment, what happened last time you yelled at your sister like that, right? How did you solve this kind of a problem before? Like, you've been mad at her before. How did you solve it before? Okay. And so being able to bring them out of the now into the past and into the future. That time blindness is like it's a joke, but it's also no joke, right? There's no internal sense of time, no anticipation of the future, no ability to wait. I can't stress this enough, right? Break down the tasks. They're not going to build a wall all at once. It's one brick a day. It has to be carefully placed and planned. We need to break these things down into those baby steps in order for them to address that time blindness. And this is a huge part of being able to plan your future, having goals, being able to meet your goals. Is this time blindness gets in the way of this. So we have to provide them the tools to address that. And we do that by externalizing time. So we want to make the time interval physical. And so putting a clock in every room, having a really large timer, and minimizing delays, right? So we don't want to do things where they have to stand there and wait in line. We don't want to put them in positions where they have to extend their reward system over longer periods of time. So again, rewarding immediately for a job well done on homework, that sort of thing. And also consequences that are both choices we want them not to make need to be more immediate, right? And we need to verbalize how those consequences are linked, right? So this is your homework time. You weren't doing homework. So now homework is going to be done with my support. It's going to be done in the family room. You're abusing your free time on the computer, and therefore you have less free time now. And we need to make sure we actually follow through. And that usually means learning how to moderate your router if it's things to do with the internet. But also remembering that when we're doing this kind of thing, that we need to not be judging them by our standard. So remember that video games are providing that amazing dopamine, and they need that dopamine. Okay. If you have problems figuring out how to juggle that, like reach out. That's something I can help with. So there's places where you can learn some more information. Let's everybody take screenshots here. All right, working memory.